Hey there. Today I've got Marlee Boyle from Nova Scotia, Canada. She's a registered respiratory therapist, a sleep consultant, and coach, and she is a co-founder of SleepWorks, who is certified in clinical sleep health. And she joins us today to discuss, you got it, ADHD and sleep. Hey, Marlee, how are you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me, Andre.
Well, I appreciate coming on because we did chat before, and honestly, you know your stuff. You've had an long experience with this, and I think it'll be a good conversation to have with the listeners because I guarantee you the majority of us are going, my sleep has sucked most of my life. And maybe ADHD, does ADHD have a role to play in that?
Absolutely, it does. So there's a very high correlation. So if you do have ADHD and you're listening, and you're like, of course I have a sleep problem. I've had it my whole life. You're not alone. There is in some literature rates of 50 to 80% of people with ADHD that also have co-occurring sleep problems. So it's certainly not rare to struggle with your sleep when you also have a neurodivergent brain.
50 to 80%, you said?
50 to 80% is
That's a
what a lot
lot.
of the,
That's a lot
yeah,
of people.
very high. And that's true for children as well.
Oh,
Some literature even puts that higher for kids.
adults and kids. So if the kids, well, then we get more tired, then our emotional bucket gets smaller and just
Absolutely.
amplifies a lot of our symptoms. So
And
this,
that's exactly what we see is the amplification of, when a neurotypical person becomes sleep deprived, we experience all of the effects of sleep deprivation. But with someone that has ADHD, those effects are actually amplified. And we see it a lot with the executive functioning, memory, all of those types of things.
you want to expand on that? I think that's very important for us to understand clear. So what are we amplifying? What if we're tired or sleep deprived ADHD brain, or
Yep.
is it well neurodivergent or more so ADHD with the autism
I'm
spectrum?
thinking more towards just
Okay.
ADHD. Yeah. So, I mean, there is sleep disruption across the board with all neurodivergence. There's higher rates than the general population, but
Okay.
for the purpose of this, specifically ADHD.
Okay. So
So,
if we're sleep deprived, what gets amplified?
so we see the executive function decline the fastest. And I'd say that's probably the most prominent symptom that I see with people with ADHD. They're already struggling with their executive function, and then it just becomes impossible. So making the plans and executing the plans becomes a disaster. Then it's a complete struggle to get themselves back on track with any kind of sleep habits to, eliminate some of that sleep debt. So we see a lot of exaggerated symptoms of not just executive function, but some of the emotional symptoms as well: depression, anxiety, um, restlessness, things like that. So a lot of those symptoms can be exaggerated with sleep disruption or sleep deprivation.
Would our time blindness get amplified?
Sorry,
Like
would your what?
time blindness. Like,
Yes, absolutely. And this is true for people that are neurotypical as well. I notice this. This is one of the first things that I find personally is affected when I'm sleep deprived. And other people might notice it too once they're aware of it, is keeping time and having a sense of time goes right out the window, even with a shorter sleep. So I'm a typical 7.5 to 8 hour sleeper. If I'm running on 6, I'm completely off schedule the next day. It's the hardest part. So for someone that is ADHD, that is actually exaggerated. So the timekeeping and being able to keep placekeeping, even things like that, can be so strongly affected when there's sleep deprivation as well.
so that's a lot of executive functioning.
A
You
lot
just
of executive
so
functioning.
that's what I heard was a lot of executive functioning things. So is it fair to say that probably our biggest amplification would be executive functioning deficits?
Executive functioning deficits and mood. But mood is
Oh,
for
mood
everybody.
and mood.
Mood
Yep,
isn't
yep.
fun.
Yeah, and our moods
It's
are
more than
amplified
waking
to
up on the
begin
wrong
with.
side of the.
Yeah,
Yeah,
moods are
it's
already amplified, so now we're going to make it worse by being deprived of
that's
sleep.
right. Yep. It's
Nice.
more than just waking up on the wrong side of the bed. That's for sure.
No, I think that's a valid point. You know, if we're waking up on the wrong side of the bed, is it because we just did, or are we sleep deprived? And I guess amplification of multiple days of deprived sleep would just exponentialize that effect, wouldn't it?
It does. It has a spiral and cascade effect. You know, you start out with one bad night's sleep, executive function declines, then all of a sudden trying to make plans that are, you know, sleep promoting things. I'm going to go to bed on time. I'm going to put the laptop away. Those plans go out the window because we're sleep deprived. The executive functioning is down. Then we have another night of sleep deprivation. And that it's a vicious cycle that can really get out of hand and spiral quite quickly.
Yeah, and then with our brains need to just make sure to do what we wanted to do and just get it done and not stop, could just definitely spiral out of control, especially the high
Absolutely.
achiever brain.
The high achieving brain, and then sleep, and I see this with my ADHD clients, is sleep is not an all or nothing situation, but a lot of my clients that have ADHD treat it like that. Oh, well, I didn't do these things, so I'm just going to throw all of my good sleep habits out the window for tonight and I'll start over tomorrow. When really sleep is not all or nothing. Even if we can do one little thing, even if we're supposed to do 5, maybe there's one little thing we can do to improve our sleep that is worthwhile. It's just hard sometimes to convince the client that.
So what I'm also hearing here is like saying, okay, you know what? I didn't get a good rest last night, or my day's running too late. Screw, I'm going to sacrifice sleep. I'm just going to say, screw, I'm not going to do anything. That's the all or nothing.
That's the all or nothing.
Either, I think that's a very great point, because I'm starting to feel guilty now that you're saying this, because I think most of us are going, yeah, because I think I just did it last night. It was everything. I wanted to go bed on time. I wanted to rest because I was going to the gym first thing this morning. So I did my whole routine and I set up the time. But a couple nights before, when I was running late, I was that got in the way. It was like, nope, just going straight to bed and not getting a restful sleep.
Yep. We skip out on some of our bedtime routine and things like that when we think we can't do the whole thing, but it's not all or nothing. Even if you practice part of that bedtime routine to help wind yourself down, it is worthwhile. I always like to tell my clients too that sleep, because it happens every night, it's cumulative. And we have a new opportunity every night to keep building and keep getting more sleep. So even if we add 15 minutes of good quality sleep to our nightly routine, it doesn't seem very much. It might seem insignificant on a night-to-night basis, but over the course of a year, that's over an extra 90 hours of rest and recovery that your brain can get more better functioning, more accurate, all of those things.
So you're
it's
actually,
not all nothing.
so you're actually saying we got to find a gray area instead
There is
of
a great.
nothing, just do one little more thing. And I think that's a valid point, because you're right. Our brain just defaults to everything or nothing.
Yeah.
And
I see that with my clients.
yeah. And it's a tough thing. It's a habit. It's a muscle you got to build up. But I think I like what you're saying, so instead of getting all 5 done, maybe you get 2. It's still 2 more than you would have done. And those 2 little things would help get a better quality sleep, which adds up. So you said cumulative. Now I wanted to ask you here, it's all over the place when I'm reading and talking to people. If I have one bad night's sleep, going to bed earlier, get longer sleeps the next couple of days, can we catch up on our sleep? Or is there some sort of thing where can we catch up or build up sleep?
That's a really good question. So again, it's kind of a gray area. Chronic sleep loss is a lot more typical than just, for being able to catch up. So we see a lot of what we call weekday warriors. They're, going to work Monday to Friday. So they're getting 5-6 hours of sleep Monday to Friday, and then crashing on the weekend in an attempt to catch up. But if your body's biological need, we'll just say for the sake of it, is 8 hours of sleep, and you're only getting 6 Monday to Friday, by the end of the week, you've accumulated about a 10-hour sleep deficit. There's no way you're going to be able to sleep an extra 10 hours on the weekend to fill that debt on a regular basis. So in that perspective, you can never catch up, and I'm doing air quotes, on sleep. But short-term sleep loss, we do have a rebound in our sleep the following night. So if you have one short night, you're sleeping pretty good regularly, you have one short night or one poor night of sleep, the next night, your brain is going to do everything it can to try to catch up on the restorative parts of sleep, such as deep sleep and REM sleep. So our body will go through a rebound where we'll get a bit more of those stages and possibly even a longer sleep the next night if our schedule allows. And that is our body's natural way of catching up. But for these long-term chronic sleep deprivation cases, we're not seeing any possibility unless you could, somehow magically sleep for a few years and catch up that way. There's no real possibility of that. But you can get back on track and get an adequate amount of sleep and reduce all of the risks and side effects.
But in shorter time spurts. So if it's a day or two, not weeks.
That's right.
So in my undiagnosed days, I would actually be working on 4 or 5 hours sleep every night for 3 to 4 weeks straight. Then I'd have a weekend where if I was sitting idle, I would sleep. I would just nap the whole weekend. Then I can go back for another 4 or 5 weeks. And that was my cycle. Does that sound normal or?
It sounds like normal for ADHD.
Okay.
Yeah. So the cycle of go, 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 crash, go, 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 crash, go, 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 crash.
Go, crash. No,
Yeah.
I never saw it as a crash.
Yeah. So, it's not ideal because our functioning over that period of time prior to the crash, even though we might not be aware of it because we're impaired from the sleep deprivation, our productivity, our efficiency, our output is going to slowly decline until that crash.
Well, and so for me, the emotional dysregulation was outstanding. Yeah,
that's a big one, and that affects more than just work.
Yes. So what things can affect our sleep? What are common conditions, or within the ADHD world, or just in general?
So, outside of the sleep disorder world, which in the sleep disorder world, we're seeing high rates of obviously delayed sleep phase, insomnia, and obstructive sleep apnea are all higher in the ADHD population. Outside of that, a lot of the sleep disruption is coming from behavioral things and screens. So too much screen time, a lot of artificial light. Light is the strongest determinant of our sleep-wake cycle. And most humans spend about 90% of their day inside. And we are kind of inundated with all this artificial light. And then the sun is down at nighttime, and because we have screens and light bulbs and electricity, we can turn on the lights. And, for evolution, our brain wasn't really exposed to artificial light for that long in human history. So we haven't really evolved to be, mitigate the effects of that. So when we hold up a screen to our eyes at 11 o'clock at night, our brain actually interprets that blue light coming from the screen as sunshine. So our brain goes, oh, the sun is up.
Time to wake up.
That's right. Wake up, delay the melatonin because it's not time to go to sleep yet. So it's
what you call delayed sleep phase, or is that something different?
Delayed sleep phase is a little bit different.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. Keep going with your thought about the melatonin, light, and screens.
So it does delay the onset of melatonin. So it does keep us awake. And
that's our sleep hormone.
That's our sleep hormone, or the hormone of darkness. And the reason that it's called that is because we actually need darkness for it to be produced and secreted in our brain. So when we're lying in beds with our screens 3 inches from our noses, our brain is interpreting that as sunlight, delaying our sleep. And then not only is it impacting our ability to fall asleep, but it actually delays our first deep stage of sleep, which at the beginning of the night is where we get the most of our deep sleep. Later on in the morning is when we get most of our REM sleep. Okay. Blue light's really impacting that deep sleep. And that's our restorative sleep for our body. That's where we heal. That's when our growth hormone is released. So, if you're working out and you want to see the effects and get your results, you have to have deep sleep. That's when our body is healing. So we're seeing a lot of that. And it's also leaving people unrefreshed waking up in the morning. If you're not getting that good restorative sleep, you're going to wake up feeling tired again.
Is there a certain percentage of deep sleep versus REM and light sleep that's average, or is it just suits their own?
So deep sleep, you should be getting about, 20, 25%. REM sleep is about 25% as well. Deep sleep is 20 to 25, 20% deep sleep would be really great. 5% typically for stage 1. And we spend about 50% of the night in stage 2.
Okay. The other thing too, I noticed once I was diagnosed and starting to think about what was, everything. And then also with my kids is another issue that causes me from not sleeping properly is the brain's not stopping. I'm actually ramping up my brain, not necessarily with blue light, could have been with something news or something very engaging, but then my brain won't stop because I'm sitting in my bed staring at the ceiling, but everything's going 200 miles an hour. So now I just start, I can't calm down. I physically can't calm down. People stop telling me I can't. Physically, I can't. So I'm searching for calm. So how can I calm myself down before bed to slow my brain down so I can get to sleep? I think
I
it's
love that
another.
question. I love that question. I feel like a lot of people struggle with that busy brain or feeling tired but wired at the end of the day.
Yeah.
How do I downregulate? How do I'm not, I'm not necessarily worrying about things. I'm just thinking a million thoughts. My brain's going at a million miles an hour. How do I stop this? Where's my off switch?
Mm-hmm.
So wouldn't it be great if we did have an off switch? But unfortunately, we don't. But
Yeah.
we can develop a bit of one with a bit of a relaxation practice.
Mm-hmm.
So active relaxation. We often think, oh, I need to relax. I'm going to lay on the couch, watch some Netflix. And sure, we're physically at rest, but our nervous system is not at rest. We're not
Right.
quieting our mind. We're not actively relaxing. So I would always recommend a bit of a relaxation practice. Pretty simple to start, does take a bit of accountability, and that's where some coaching comes in. But even 10 minutes per day, practicing 5 out of 7 days a week during the daytime helps solidify that skill enough that you
Mm-hmm.
can start using it for sleep at night. And it can become your off switch. You can employ these techniques. Our bodies become really conditioned and it becomes really effective. The problem that I see with it is when I mention these techniques, people are like, oh, I've tried that, it didn't work. But often we're trying it when we're already in the state of the busy brain. I can't shut my brain off. I'm trying to sleep. I'm stressed out because I got to get up in the morning. I have 25 things to do before 10 a.m. We have those
Mm-hmm.
thoughts going through our brain. And then we try a breathing technique or a guided meditation for the first time and it doesn't work. So then we have the idea, oh, it's not going to work for me. But it does take some daytime practice before it can be used for sleep at night. And then it can become your off switch.
I think that's a good idea of daytime practice. Like I know I did that before bed, but I tell everyone, give it 6 months. Then I start to notice the change. And I have it where if my brain's wired, I have to do a guided meditation just to
Yeah.
bring it down slower and then
Yeah.
get back in my routine of reading and that. What other tips and tricks do you have for us to sleep
So,
better or get a little bit better quality?
okay. Well, just within that, or that
Yep.
relaxation practice, I do find, and this is true for my colleague works more with kids. It's true for the kids with ADHD as well. Body-based relaxation techniques seem to be more effective. Now, that's just anecdotal. I don't have any scientific proof of that. Anecdotally, our clients respond better to more body-based relaxation techniques. So things like progressive muscle relaxation, or for kids, it would be called
Oh.
spaghetti legs.
So is that
But
looking at my toes, relax my foot, my ankle, my shin,
got it.
all the way
Yeah.
up? Okay.
The tensing and relaxing, it gives you that physical sense of relaxation. So it can help a lot with the body restlessness, but it can also distract our brain because we're also thinking about paying attention to the tension leaving those muscle groups and the sequence that we're doing it in. So something like that can be really effective.
I like the word you use. We have to distract our brain. I like that. And it's really what we got to do.
To fall asleep, you have to distract your brain from your own thoughts. So typically when I get a brand new client has never worked, their sleep has been on that spiral, their executive function is on that spiral, I don't ask them to change behaviors to start with. Asking
Mhm.
anyone to change behaviors is challenging. When their executive function is crashed, it makes it twice as hard. So what I always start with is some environmental suggestions to improve sleep. One easy thing that everybody can do, and this is great. So if you're, if you're a parent with ADHD, maybe you have a child with ADHD, you can get tunable lighting for your home. It's inexpensive.
Mhm.
Everybody has Wi-Fi pretty much now. The light bulbs, I think they're about $10, and they go to an app and you can change the color, you can change the timing. So you can actually make your home more conducive to sleep and more natural to our outside environment, which is helpful if, like you said, you sleep better when you're camping and things like that. We always sleep better if we're outside getting that natural light.
Mhm.
So we can set up those artificial lights to mimic more of a sunset and sunrise situation, which is much better for regulating our melatonin and our sleep. So once we have something like that in place, that the client doesn't have to put a lot of mental energy into trying to remember all these things, or like feeling like, oh, I didn't do it, so I failed.
Mhm.
We start with something that's environmental. They can set it and forget it and just reap some of the benefits. Once they get a little bit more sleep, like I said, even 15 minutes makes a difference, then their executive function's a little bit better. And then you can start to introduce, hey, maybe in the evening, set your blue light blocking glasses next to your laptop, set an alarm. If it's after 8 p.m., throw those on just to protect your eyes from getting some blue light. Starting to add a habit stack and just making little micro steps for those clients can lead to big results, because it's something that we do every day. But I always like to start with something environmental like tunable lighting, because it doesn't take any energy. They don't have to think about it. Just plug them in, set it to your Wi-Fi, program the app so it's set for a certain time. You want to wake up at a certain time. You want to start getting down regulating, getting, ready for bed at a certain time, and you can set that all through. So I, use technology as a tool for sleep rather than a hindrance, and start there. And then once we start to see some better sleep, then making the behavioral changes become a little bit easier.
Right.
So things like having that bedtime routine to wind down, that is important. That's another step of quieting that busy brain. We need to give our body cues that it's not go time. It's time to unwind, start settling down. We want our brains to slow down, stop thinking about everything. Those thoughts won't serve us in the middle of the night. There's nothing we can do about that. And having a regular bedtime routine, even if it's only, 15 minutes, keeping those things consistent is a good signal for your brain to say, oh, right, this is what I do as I start to calm down and get ready for bed.
And do
our
it the
brain
same way every time, not change it up all the time.
You got it. Keep it consistent. And then if you have a night where maybe you stayed out late, even if you can do part of your bedtime routine before going to sleep, it's better than doing nothing. So if you have a couple of good sleep promoting activities that you can keep consistent, that's a great signal to your body. I mean, we have bedtime routines as babies. We get the bath and the baby lotion and a lullaby or a story. And then we have this, but we don't grow out of that. We have, we want to be able to fall asleep easily and have restorative sleep. And we have to prepare for that, if you will.
And then for our brains, we need to slow that thing down so we can just distracted enough to fall asleep.
That's right. Down regulate enough that your brain isn't firing at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Oh, this is fantastic, Marlee. I appreciate your time. I know I learned a lot. I know the people are here learned a lot. You'll find in the show notes, Marlee gave me a Venn diagram, 2 circles, ADHD and sleep loss. And then the overlapping part is where things get affected or gets amplified, like we were talking about. Inattention, forgetfulness, peacekeeping abilities probably gone out the window. I know that. Impulsivity, irritability. Take a look at it, please. It's easy to download. It's a click, go straight to PDF. There's no other, it's made it easy. Emotional dysregulation. Please take a look at this. I think it's very fantastic. We need solutions and systems around our sleep deprivation. And the one big thing I learned around that is our short-term sleep rebound has to be within a day or two, not weeks later. And catch up only happens within a short amount of time. And behavioral changes help us downturn our brain for sleep. There's a lot we didn't discuss, Marlee, but I think we should have you back to go in a little more detail, deeper, because there's different conditions, sleep apnea, actual physiological things that are outside the ADHD brain that affects us. Even revenge bedtime techniques versus night owl circadian rhythm. I think that's an episode on its own. So I will have Marlee back to go more detail, because remember, 50 to 80% of the ADHD world have co-occurring sleep problems, adults and kids. So you're not alone. I get you. When we're tired, I start walking away from stuff a lot sooner. I know I'm having a bad day. I'm very tired, so I leave. So Remember, ADHD brain affects our sleep quality, and what can we do to improve it in order to get better quality sleep? And I like what you said, Marlee. It's not necessarily quantity, quality is actually key. And I think that's a big insight on my part. And for you, the listener, how is your sleep? And how do you think is it your ADHD affecting it? I'd challenge you to take a look at it and look into it, talk to your doctor, or just talk to anyone. Just take a look at that. Marlee, thanks again. I appreciated your knowledge and sharing here.
Thank you so much, Andre. I'm looking forward to coming back.
Great. Love to hear that. And to you, the listener, thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.